Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today I want to talk about the 2015 Gimbal UFO video. Of all the videos that were leaked from the Pentagon back in 2017 and that the Pentagon later confirmed were real, I would say probably the Gimbal video seems to have gotten the most attention. It really seems that it's most certainly an obsession amongst debunkers. There's no question about that. They don't know what to say about it. It's been driving them crazy now since 2017, since December of 2017, basically for 5 years. And basically, that video was filmed off the east coast of the United States, and from a fighter plane off the USS Theodore Roosevelt carrier strike group back in 2015. And it's just something that's just not going away. Discussion about this just is all over it's still all over the internet. I mean, people are still talking about this, debating about it. And I mean, basically, I've stated this before, and I'm going to state it again right now, that I believe the Gimbal video basically clearly shows a flying saucer. That's what it is. It's an object that's basically non-human craft of some sort that was captured by the video camera on this fighter, on this jet fighter. That's basically what it is. Anyway, I wanted to talk about this for a few days now. I saw on January 28th on Twitter, there was a guy named Adam Goldsack. This guy says he's a clinical assistant in neurorehabilitation, a writer, author, researcher, criminology, psychology, and occupational therapy, one of the first UAP activists. He has over 3,000 followers. And I want to point out something that he was saying here on Twitter on January 28th. He says, despite the assertions of somebody named @uncertain_vector about the full-length video of the gimbal he's talking about the video, direction, and following cubes, there is no mention in this Mick West article, no mention that this video and case was briefed at the highest levels of Congress. And what he's referring to, of course, the biggest debunker of our age, Mick West. He basically published an article last August in skeptic.com that he tries to show what Mick has been saying for a long time is that there's no rotation. It looked like, if you watch that video, it looks like the gimbal flying saucer, the non-human craft that we see clearly in that picture. He's trying to say that it's not rotating. Well, I pointed out before that what does it matter if it's rotating or not? It's a flying saucer. I mean, that's what it is. Though those guys flying those planes that day, they didn't know what it was, and apparently there was a whole fleet of them, not just this one here. Anyway, but Adam Goldsack continues here. He says, there is no mention of counter-arguing points, and this is with regard, by the way, this is with regard to the article that Mick West wrote back in August of 2022. It says, there is no mention of counter-arguing points to the alternate rotation theory by other people. He mentions their names, other people that have looked at this, and I'll leave the links for this, and you could check these things out for yourself, but that's not the point of what I'm going to get into here, which refute West's theory. There is no call for further efforts for Department of Defense to release the video or data which shows the distance of the object, which might settle the debate. Worst of all, this type of misinformation is readily available to the public on Google and was infamously used by Julian Barnes, anonymous sources, to attempt to discredit the case. Now, let me just stop there for a second. As a lot of you know, Julian Barnes is a writer for the New York Times, and he wrote a piece. He's written about UFOs. There was a piece that he wrote last October where he had anonymous Pentagon sources pointing out that they were basically using this misinformation that Mick West put out about the gimbal video, about that there's no rotation to it, as proof, quote, proof, end quote, there's nothing. This is a prosaic object. There's nothing here to see, basically. And anyway, Goldsack continues. He says, as the next few years unfold and more data is released on the gimbal case and others, will the world remember who fought for objective UAP truth and who tried to stigmatize space aliens with misinformation and disinformation? Anyway, yeah, there were several different people that had that, offered counter arguments to Mick West's assertions that this thing really isn't rotating, right? That this gimbal object isn't rotating. But I'll give this to Mick West credit. In this article from last August, at least he doesn't say he knows what it is. He doesn't know what this object is. He pretty much focused on the rotation, but at the same time, to me, the whole thing is it's pure gaslighting. I mean, this thing, you're seeing it with your own eyes. I mean, you're seeing this object in this video, and it's obviously, when you look at this thing, it's a flying saucer. You compare this gimbal object to like some of the famous pictures that have been taken over the decades. You look at the 1950 McMinnville image that was taken by Paul Trent. Him and his wife are these people in the state of was it Oregon or Oregon, and they see this flying saucer basically hovering over their farm, and they take Paul Trent and his wife Evelyn both saw this, and Paul grabbed his camera and took some pictures of it. It's clearly a flying saucer. It's never been debunked. Now, there have been debunkers who have come forward and said, "Oh, I proved it's nothing, but it was a mirror off a pickup truck," which is nonsense. It wasn't. There have been photo experts that looked at that picture and determined that no, this is a real object that was big and it was just hovering there way up in the sky. And there's been so many pictures like this taken by over the years, and you could actually, for instance, in the McMinnville UFO picture, you could see the skin of the craft. You could see that it's obviously it's metallic. Right now, of course, in the gimbal videos, it's like a shadow. You're looking basically at an infrared. The image is caught on the infrared camera, and so it's showing you basically the heat that is being generated from this object. But when you look at it, it's a saucer. It's saucer shaped. You don't see any. There's no wings on it. There's no any kind of propulsion system that you could see. And again, this was only one of many objects that these pilots saw that day. So to me, it's just like just like flying saucers that people have been reporting since the 1940s. Okay, you look at another picture like the Rex Heflin saucer. It seems like a smaller type of craft, but it's still saucer shaped. That was from 1965. He took 3 pretty good pictures of this saucer that he saw, and it's a saucer. That's what it is. It's a flying saucer. It's none of these, and again, these things have never been proven to be hoaxes, like the McMinnville picture, the Rex Heflin picture, and what makes the gimbal image so interesting is the fact that again, this was something that the government admitted. Yeah, this is something one of our pilots captured with with their camera, and you could see. Obviously, as you look at this thing, well, there you go. What else do you need? We've been playing again since 2017 now. We're just a little over 5 years since these videos were released. We're still playing this game on arguing about what this thing is or not. It's a flying saucer. That's what the gimbal object is. It's a flying saucer. You see it with your own eyeballs. That's what it is. Let's put it this way. The government wouldn't have come out and said something like this. They wouldn't have said, "Hey, well, they wouldn't have said, oh, we don't know what it is," if this was all part of some sort of a plan. Obviously, they're saying they don't know what it is. Now, just because this guy here, this debunker, doesn't want to believe in this reality, just because there are people out there who want to hear that there's nothing to this, that there's really no such thing as non-human intelligences here on this planet. Just because there's people, that doesn't take away from the fact that there is. The reality is that there is, though. There really is. Again, I've talked about this a number of times. I've seen one of the beings, and I've seen one of the craft up close, so I know that there's something here. And this gimbal video, obviously, it's a flying saucer. And this is just one instance of many that we don't even know about yet. There's other stuff. There's other videos out there that are going to come out over the course of time, that are going to be leaked, and you're going to see more and more evidence that's going to basically prove, and the final analysis, everyone's going to start realizing over time that yes, these objects are definitely not man-made. They're definitely not. They couldn't be. They're definitely operated by non-human intelligences, just like some people have encountered. there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff out there that people don't talk about. We've been focused on like things like the gimbal video and including myself, and I'm guilty of this too. A lot of times when I'm talking in my podcast, I focus on certain cases, like the most famous ones: Travis Walton, Ariel School, Betty and Barney Hill. But there are so many cases that are just not talked about. I mean, there's this guy who has a YouTube channel. His name is, and some of you probably already know who I'm talking about. Preston Dennett. This guy, in a way, he's like some of those other channels I talk about, like UFOB and Eyes on Cinema. Like those channels, Eyes on Cinema and UFOB, they show like a lot of different snippets from different interviews from different people over the decades who have had experiences with extraterrestrials, flying saucers, landed flying saucers, all kinds of different reports and little snippets of documentaries. Now this Preston Dennett, this guy, he basically he's just some YouTuber out there that just he'll offer you like 10 cases where people ran into humanoids in Arizona or something like that, and then 6 cases of alien humanoid encounters in New York, things like that, and there'll be a lot of cases you never heard of before. But see, there's just so much out there that people just are not aware. Most people are not aware of, that we've been encountering. There's been people encountering not only these craft, seeing these craft, right, but there's been people, encountering the beings, seeing them up close and personal. Some people get abducted by them. Sometimes people just run it, like somehow will pull over in their car and just by chance see something. There's so many different cases besides the ones that the famous ones like Lonnie Zamora. I mean, that's one I talk about all the time. There's just so much more out there. But anyway, the point of what I'm trying to get at here is that the gimbal video is basically a flying saucer. Now, this article that he's talking about here, that he's complaining about, Adam Goldsack is complaining about, that Mick West actually published here. Let's see, I think it was August of last year. Yeah, August 2nd, 2022, it was published in skeptic.com. I will leave the link for it. I'm not going to read the whole article, but he does say throughout this, in this article, that, he doesn't know what it is. I mean, and I don't see, at least that's one concession. It reminds me of, if you remember that, I remember when I was a kid, growing up in the 70s, they would show like at Christmas time, leading up to Christmas, they would always show these cartoons, like, with these Rankin Bass cartoons. And I remember this one that was called The Year Without a Santa Claus. You remember? I'm sure a lot of you remember this. I know some of you out there know what I'm talking about, right? Remember that that was the one where it showed how Kris Kringle became Santa Claus, how he met his wife and all that stuff, and how he ended up in the North Pole, all of that stuff, right? And it was really interesting. It was when you were a kid and you watched that stuff, oh man, you couldn't wait till it came on. And I remember the bad guy in that was, there was a couple of bad guys. There was the Burgermeister Burger. If you can't remember that, he banned toys in the town, in this town that they were living, Somber Town. And then there was, but the other one was the Winter Warlock. Remember the Winter Warlock? He was real evil, but he captured Kris Kringle at some point in that thing, but he actually became good though. And then at one point, right, they were singing a song, put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking across the floor. Put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door. That's how it could be for some of these debunkers. Like here, they're putting one foot in front of the other. At least admitting that they don't know what the gimbal object is. At least he's doing that much. But again, it's all, to me, this is all obfuscation. It's all misinformation. It's an effort because this guy and people like him do not believe that there's a presence here. They just don't, and they don't want to believe it, and they don't want anyone else to believe it. So they're going to flood the internet waves with misinformation and disinformation. They're going to go on mainstream media outlets and get interviewed by people and basically provide misinformation to the public in general, to the general public. And that's my problem with this. But at least he doesn't know what the gimbal object is. At least that, but I'm going to tell you right now, again, what it is, it's a flying saucer. It's most certainly something that's not operated by humankind. That's what it is. there should be no mystery about this anymore. We're going to go through some of this article here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we're going to go through a little bit of it here. It says, in recent years, whenever you see a story on UFOs, it almost invariably includes images from the gimbal video, a blurry monochrome clip of what vaguely looks like a flying saucer. I wouldn't say vaguely. I think it clearly looks like a flying saucer. To me, it clearly looks like it's not vague, it's clear. I mean, now we're not seeing the skin of the object. It's not like something like I stated before, it's not like the McMinnville UFO, but I mean, you're seeing it. It's pretty clearly, it's shaped like a saucer. That's what it's shaped like. You're watching this object flying, and it's shaped like a flying saucer, just like everyone's talked about for 75 plus years. Anyway, continuing, it says, Gimbal has rapidly become the dominant icon of the UFO, UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, which now has become... It's now known as unidentified anomalous phenomena, by the way. Just keystroke UFO into a Google image search and a quarter of the results will be a frame from the gimbal, which is true. That is true. I mean, in a way, it's unfortunate because there's just so much more out there. For instance, there's the Turkey UFO videos, but because that was taken by just a regular person, right, a regular fisherman who had multiple witnesses back in 2007, 2008, 2009, this Turkish fisherman took a series of different videos showing an alien craft hovering over the sea near Turkey, and it's obvious. You could actually, in some of the, when you zoom in on it, you could actually see the alien beings, and they're clearly beings that are not human. But because it was filmed by just a regular person, that doesn't count. For some reason, that stuff doesn't count. Only the stuff that's filmed that comes from the Pentagon counts. And even then these bunkers don't want it to count. Anyway, continuing. It says the video first came to the public's attention in December 2017 in a New York Times article authored by Helene Cooper, who covers the Pentagon for the Times, Ralph Blumenthal, who authored a biography of John Mack, a psychiatrist who studied those who claimed to be alien abductees, and Leslie Kean, author of a best-selling UFO book. The online version of the story was headed by an embedded version of the video described as an encounter between a Navy FA-18 Super Hornet and an unknown object. This now ubiquitous video is indeed interesting. It shows the view from the targeting pod of the FA-18, which I'll refer to as the jet. It's thermal camera footage. So it is filming something that's very hot in the middle of the screen, which I'll refer to as the object. The object is roughly the shape of a classic flying saucer and appears to be flying rapidly to the left just above the clouds. It seems as if it's surrounded by a bubble of cold air termed the aura. Now let me just stop there. I think actually it's pretty clear. In my opinion, it's not. It doesn't roughly, in my view, it's not roughly the shape of a flying saucer. I think it's clearly the shape of a flying saucer. For the first 20 seconds of the video, not a lot is going on, but around 23 seconds, weird things start to happen. There's a little bump of the camera and the object rotates a little counterclockwise. This happens 3 more times. During a particularly long rotation, one of the pilots in the plane says incredulously, "Look at that thing, it's rotating." The object continues to rotate until it's past vertical and inexplicably appears to slow down to a near stop. Now, of course, even the witnesses that were in the plane said they saw this object rotating. Now, of course, he's saying here that this person was only looking at the same screen that we're seeing right now. He was looking at the video screen of the thing rotating. But the pilot was there. I mean, again, this pilot has never been interviewed by any of these debunkers, so I don't know. Again, later on, he's going to make assertions that this pilot never saw these things really rotate. That's all in his imagination. But again, before I even get that far, what does it matter if they saw it rotating or not? Again, the object's a flying saucer. It's not any sort of conventional aircraft that we know of. Continuing. If this were simply a video some guy took in his backyard, then it wouldn't have received much attention outside of the UFO community. Yeah, he's right about that. It would not have received as much attention outside. And isn't that a shame? Because somebody filmed something in their backyard, if something how many times over the decades have things been filmed from backyards that just do not get the attention they actually deserve, right? Because, it could have been faked. Because I wasn't there, and besides, I don't believe in that stuff. Anyway, continuing, says, but Gimbal was radically different to anything the media had ever seen before. Here was a video not only being showcased by the New York Times, but also directly attributed to the Department of Defense. It became, therefore, nothing less than the holy grail of UFO videos. Let me just stop there before I continue. It's not the whole, there's other holy grail. The holy grail of UFO videos, as far as anybody should be concerned, is the Turkey UFO videos. That's the holy grail. I mean, you actually see the craft over extended periods of time in different videos. Just because it was filmed by somebody who's not in the military somewhere doesn't mean it doesn't count. You could actually see the alien beings. You had experts from 4 different countries look at those videos and determine that those videos were in fact not faked and they were authentic. Anyway, continuing here. The holy grail of UFO, I'll start from that. I'll start that sentence over again. It says, here was a video not only being showcased by the New York Times, but also directly attributed to the Department of Defense. It became, therefore, nothing less than the holy grail of UFO videos, an official video of an actual UFO, not simply some dot in the sky, but an actual flying saucer defying the laws of aerodynamics. Ufologists were understandably elated, believing that at long last they had definitive evidence of alien visitation. Now, let me just stop there for a minute. There was already definitive evidence of alien visitation made again with numerous other the Turkey UFO videos. I mean, just in this case, the only thing that was different here was that you had basically, these were leaked from the Pentagon at the time. And then later on, a year or two later, when the Pentagon stepped forward and said, yeah, there are our videos, all right, they're real, and yeah, we don't know what they are. See, here's who was not elated, though. The people who were not elated were the debunkers themselves. They don't like this. This is like, this is like, this could lead to complete collapse of their whole grift. Anyway, continuing. It's complicated. UFOs are often described as unidentified because conventional explanations, identified flying objects, are sometimes difficult to pin down. Usually this is simply because the data are insufficient, but sometimes it's because the analysis required is difficult and complex to perform and even harder to understand. Even when the data set is adequately analyzed, sufficient ambiguities remain so that we cannot provide a convincingly definitive, mundane answer, thus leaving open the possibility of some unconventional explanation which usually means aliens. Okay, let me just stop there right now. Again, I would have to say, and I've stated this a million times before, one of the foremost ufologists in the world, the late Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist who knew that something was going on, understood, did enough research to understand that there is some presence on this planet that's not human. Most sightings are not extraterrestrial. It's when people see stuff far away, right? It could be anything, right? It's not even worth talking about, really. Some people will talk about it, but it isn't really worth it. The object that I saw in 1994, I mean, that was within 20 feet of me. I was within 20 feet of this thing, and it was only 2.5 stories off the ground, and it made no sound, right? It was a saucer-shaped object, right? And so that's different. Those are the kind of objects we're talking about. Some people have seen these things landed. Some people have seen these things landed, and they have seen short little humanoid type beings walking around it. I mean, there's so many cases like this, but none of these debunkers ever talk about that stuff. Ever. Anyway, continuing. It says, skeptics recognize this problem as a form of the God of the gaps argument for the existence of God. Science has not answered every question about the universe, and many mysteries remain to be solved. Those mysteries, though shrinking in number, are taken by those seeking something more as evidence of something beyond science, i.e. God. And if not God, well, at least aliens. That's all nonsense. That's just made up horse dump. All right. Continuing, it says, there are many questions we can attempt to answer about the gimbal video. How big is the object? How far away is it? How fast is it moving? What is it? Why is it there? Who, if anyone or anything, is on board? There are difficult questions to answer because of the lack of information. We might theorize it's a misidentified small plane, but that's difficult to prove or dismiss. So instead, I want to focus on those aspects of the video that seem, as some have claimed, to defy the limits of known aeronautic technology and perhaps even physics itself. Let's concentrate on what we actually see and measure in the video: the flying saucer shape, the aura, and the rotation. Okay. Let's just stop here for a second. Okay, you have to remember when we're talking about on this podcast and other people that study this subject, so other people that are interested in flying saucers and visitors from other worlds who are pretty certain that that's what's going on here, right? I'm absolutely certain because I saw one of the beings and I saw one of the craft on 2 different occasions, so I'm really certain, right? But when you take all of this stuff into totality, you know, the Gimbal incident, you know, have all these other people filing these reports and, you know, making claims. Yeah, they might sound incredible, but when you take everything into totality, it tells you, it gives you all you need to know. I mean, by just pretending it's not true, denying it, it's like deliberate stupidity. That's what it is. It's acting deliberately stupid. Here's the deal. Now, there's a lot of different things that the skeptics will point out, and I'm not going to be the person here that's going to basically flood the internet with what I view as misinformation, disinformation. However, this article that is in skeptic.com is available for anyone who wants to read it, and you could read what Mick West says. Like, he comes up with different explanations that try to explain the aura around a craft. For instance, like around that craft there's an aura. He comes up with the mundane explanation that tries to explain that away. He comes up with an explanation that tries to explain away that we're not really seeing it rotating, right? That there's other reasons for that what we're seeing, it's, you know, basically a mirage. I mean, an optical illusion, an optical trick or whatever. So you could read all his explanation in his article, and I will leave the link for that. But and here's the reason I'm not going to read it, because there are other people out there that have other arguments to the opposite, which he never talks about. So what's the point in talking about what he says? You know, so there are other people out there. There are different articles that have been written by different people out there regarding this, that basically they refute it basically. So I think that's, you know, to me, you know, you need to check that out. But there's another part of this article that I want to get into, and this is I think is really important. It says here at the very end, he concludes his whole article with he provides his analysis of why he doesn't believe that this thing is, you know, that there could be other explanations for the rotation and all that kind of stuff, right? And here's what he writes. He writes, "Not everyone agrees with his analysis, basically. Passions run high in the UFO community, and some members have continued to push back against the rather down-to-earth explanation offered here. A few simply drop the rotating evidence and claim it was never important anyway, with comments such as nothing more than a waste of time and effort, it adds no value and reaches no conclusion other than saying, well, it's a glare and rotating. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's still a flying saucer. That doesn't change anything, right? What does that really change, right? And again, there's going to be more video that comes out. There's going to be a longer version of this video that's going to come out at some point. And there's all this stuff that he's talking about here is all going to be flushed down the toilet at some point, because, again, he's wrong. He's just wrong. Debunkers are wrong on this whole subject. And then he continues here. It says, some insist that the analysis is flawed and try to convince others in every way. Others, fortunately, have been willing to change their minds. Okay. Fortunately, others have. He's saying that's fortunate that others have changed their minds based on his analysis. I mean, okay, let's just sit here and talk about this for a second. For one thing, this has been in the hands of the government for a long time now. Since what, 2015? It is now 2023. The government has never put out, we have not received, I mean, they've been looking at this, they've been analyzing this for a long time, along with everything else, and they don't have any explanation. And this video game programmer is going to try to convince, I mean, that's fortunate that some video game programmer has convinced people there's nothing to this? How's that fortunate? How is that fortunate? That's unfortunate. So, you know, that's how it should be written. But anyway, let's read this commenter. It says, others, fortunately, have been willing to change their minds, as in this comment. Okay, now this comment has no attribution whatsoever. I don't know who wrote this, but here's what the comment says. It says, I'll never forget the day of the Gimbal video drop. I thought that everything had changed. Then your rebuttal video slapped my ego down. It was very bittersweet. Okay. Now, this is some random internet person? I mean, who is this? I need to, for one thing, there's a lot of sock puppetry puppetry going on the internet. I don't know. There's people getting caught doing this stuff all the time. Basically, sock puppets, setting up bogus accounts and then writing comments to their own Twitter accounts or Reddit accounts and all that kind of stuff. There's people that do that kind of stuff. I've seen people getting caught doing this nonsense. So how do we know? I need to, with this guy who made this comment here, right? This glowing comment that my whole world was changed because of you, Mick West, right? I mean, I need to see attribution, right? Who wrote this comment? I need to see an affidavit that was signed before a notary public, right? Before I go believe in this. I mean, how do we know it wasn't just him sending himself this comment? I don't know that. There's no, who wrote this? Let's read it again here. I'll never forget the day of the Gimbal video drop. I thought that everything had changed. Then your rebuttal video slapped my ego down. It was very bittersweet. And then he ends the article with this. He says, while not a giant step for all skepticism, still a small step forward for critical thinking. I say uncritical thinking. I think the thinking in this article is bogus. I think you're not using critical thought at all. None of these debunkers are using any kind of critical thought. They don't care about the evidence. They don't even consider it in any of their analyses. Nothing that they do, they using critical thinking at all. But again, I get a kick out that comment. That would be like if I were to do something like that on my podcast, right? I could guarantee you there would be people would see right through it, right? I'd be run off the internet on a rail. Think about that. This is the kind of thing that gets me angry. When people throw out that would be like me saying, yes, I received a comment from R2C3D2POHAL 8576309, and they said, Jim, if it wasn't for your genius and your brilliance, why, I would have believed in nothing. I would never have even believed that the heart inside of my chest was still beating. But because of you, Jim, thank you so much for showing me the way, for showing me the light. My eyes are now opened. That's what it would have been like. It would be like me doing something like that. Saying, oh yeah, I received this great comment. This is what somebody thinks of me. Now that they didn't believe in anything before, but now all of a sudden they believe in everything. They believe in that there's an extraterrestrial presence here. Oh, Jim, I'll tell you what. If it wasn't for you, I would never believe in extraterrestrials. Now I do. Before, I was just a moron. I was just an idiot, an imbecile. I would have went through life an imbecile, Jim, if it wasn't for you. I would have been a slug crawling along the dirt. That's what it would have been. I mean, could you imagine if I did something like that? That's the same. To me, that's the same thing. Thank you so much, Jim, for opening my eyes. No longer will I go through life a complete absolute moron. Thank you for your sheer brilliance. People, if I did something like that, people would see, the people that watch my kind of podcast, right, would be very, very upset. Let me tell you something. If you're a follower of these debunkers of Mick West, that's something like what he wrote there without any attribution at all. That's an insult to intelligence. And let me tell you something. If your intelligence was not insulted, then maybe you don't have any intelligence to insult. Anyway, until next time.